Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Oh, look at you. Okay, grandkids and book. Okay, so it's you have a great energy about you. Really, really great. And obviously that's what people so in the work that we talk about in terms of service,
Yeah.
we say that the power of attraction and pull really radiates, and that's what people are drawn to, right?
Yeah.
So in this photo, I don't know if this is the professional photographer who got it, but it's a great photo of you sitting with your two grandkids, looking at books. Really bright moment in could be an office room. Yeah, it looks more like an office room in the kitchen. You're seated on the floor. One of your grandkids looks like he's 2 years old, and one is 3 years old, roughly. Yeah, great little moment.
Yeah.
What are you trying to say?
Well, that was taken by my daughter-in-law, and I had just received the first box of my books, and they live
Oh,
they live in Minneapolis. And so when my publisher sent me a message and said, I have your books, I said, can I come down and get them now? It's about a 3.5 hour drive for me.
oh yeah.
And, but I was so excited. I was like a kid, waiting for that present, and so when she said they were ready, I jumped in the car and I drove down there. I picked up my books and I thought, well, I'm not going to open these. I'm not going to just open them by myself. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
with, and another one of my whys why I wrote a book is to keep my mom's legacy alive of I am, I can, I will. And then for those younger generations and my grandchildren, the oldest one is in the picture there. He's almost 4 and an avid reader, and they're reading books to him every day. Uh,
Nice.
and then the youngest one, the little guy, is 1 year old, and
Okay.
so that picture, the little 1 year old is clapping because he's all excited. I was excited,
Yep.
and the older one, we're ripping open the box, and so again that picture taken with an iPhone, I'm assuming, just froze a really exciting moment for me
Mm-hmm.
personally and professionally. And then those kids, they keep growing like crazy. They're getting
Yep.
older every day. And so that's the moment that grandpa opened the books, and
Mm-hmm.
so I want them to look at that. I want them to look at my book when they're teenagers and read about grandpa's stories and grandpa's challenges that he had, and how he got through different challenging times in his life.
Mm.
And so that's like, it was just a sweet picture that my daughter-in-law snapped at a really cool moment. And that's one
Yeah.
thing with photography nowadays. When we can search so readily our archives
Yep.
of pictures, it's just amazing. And to have that at our fingertips is so powerful.
Yeah. No, it really is. So you said that when you were 8, I think you said 8, you knew you wanted to be in law enforcement.
Probably even
Is that
6.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
6. Okay, 6. Yeah, yeah. So interesting. Like if we see things, life, whatever, as being kind of not exact mirrored copies, but as kind of cyclical repetitions.
Hmm.
So here, like in when you're 6 years old, sitting on the ground, looking
Hmm.
at whatever it is, toys, books, whatever, can you remember if there was a thing that really, like an object or something that really kind of personified this idea of becoming a police officer? Or was
Vivid.
it just the image? Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, no, and it was a picture. We were in Seattle, Washington, visiting my mom's cousin, and so I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my my mom's cousin's son, whom I've never met, but there was a
Mm-hmm.
picture of him on the table, and he was in uniform. He was a Washington State police officer, and I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
know who he was, but I just saw him in uniform. But I remember, like, wow, that's what I want to do. And at that,
Mm-hmm.
the Vietnam War was still going on. It was just kind of finishing up, and so there was. I don't think we watched TV a lot as kids, but I remember images of the Vietnam War and when our soldiers were coming back and the protests that were going on and the uniformed police officers. And I just remember seeing a lot of that images in my
Mm-hmm.
head. And when I saw he'd be a cousin of some sort of mine in uniform. It really, I thought that's what I want to do. He looked proud. He looked courageous. He looked strong. And I,
Mm-hmm.
just in a picture.
Yeah. And so, in a similar way, you got your two grandsons here,
Hmm.
who their interface with their grandfather is like, for them, all they know is, oh, their grandfather writes books,
Yeah.
and they just wrote this. So again, the title of your book.
Find your beat, walk in the rhythm of life.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so why don't you walk us through your book roughly? Like, what are the themes? What are you trying to achieve in the book? Like, what is the reader going to get?
My goal is when I'm speaking professionally and with the book and with everything, this podcast, my goal is, yeah, I'm sharing my stories, but it has nothing to do with me. I want my goal is for the reader or the listener, or when I'm speaking, the people in the audience, to hear the stories of examples of mistakes that I've made, trauma that I've experienced and how that shaped me and affected me. But again, that's not about me. So I want them to take those stories, plug it into their life, and to say, you know what? If this guy went through 28 years of a really potentially toxic environment, with always looking for the bad in people, and because that
Mm-hmm.
was our job, we look for what people are doing wrong, not right. And
Right, right.
if he can do that, that's what I want to do. So the book has stories of people that have impacted my life, like my father, my mother. There's a guy named Norman in the book that just, at the time seemed like a random kind of a homeless individual, but he rocked my world. He just a kind and gentle man, and made me recognize that my rhythm was off and I was really becoming toxic myself, and that it was
Oh,
us versus them, and everything was framed in that us, like my night shift partners, and them was everybody else. And I'm
mm,
looking at our world now and I see a lot of that us versus them. Uh,
mm-hmm,
whether it's political or countries or just our belief systems, we can really get wrapped up into that us versus them. And then
mm-hmm.
so it's stories and it's techniques and tactics that I've used through my life that have been modeled for me. And in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, I've been studying them, like from not really I'm not a psychologist. I don't pretend to be, but more from, why do these techniques work? Like
Mm-hmm.
gratitude, or meditation. Why does meditation
Right.
work? And I came on to meditation very late in life, but that was a game changer for me.
Wow. Okay.
So a lot of these techniques and again, it's a short book. It's like 132 pages. People are messaging me from around the world. It's really crazy.
Oh,
And they're
nice.
like, hey, I sat down and read your book in 2.5 hours, and they, and they're telling me what hit for them, and it's so surreal knowing that somebody in Germany might be reading my book, or
Mm-hmm.
in the United Kingdom, or maybe Hong Kong
Hong
someday.
Kong.
Yeah, I mean, send me your address, brother.
I love it. Now, okay, just to not lose that for a second, you bump into this fellow named Norman. You
Right.
don't know him, I assume. You sort of met him. What what was the catalyst that created this sort of like change in thinking in you?
I think it was the timing of, I was really deep into that us versus them mindset, where I thought the world was against us, the few guys that I worked with on nights, and I thought everybody was against us. And when I when I met Norman, he thought he was in Detroit, Michigan, but he was in Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. So it's about 900 miles
Wow.
apart. And he was clearly confused, but he wasn't a danger to himself or anybody else. But he was,
Hmm.
I don't know if it was dementia or I don't really know, but he was a little
Yeah.
confused but just this kind and gentle man, skinny. And so I just, all I did was I gave him a ride to a hotel and got him a hotel room for the night. We had a system in place for just for that. And,
Yeah.
but as I was leaving, and he had these brown eyes that a lot of people, when they're talking about somebody that's impacted them, a lot of people talk about this person's eyes. And Norman's
Hmm.
eyes were brown, and they were unlike anybody's. The way he looked at me was nobody had ever looked at me like that before then or since then. But he was looking
Mm.
at me, and it felt like he was looking into my soul. And as I was leaving, and this was late at night, probably 2 o'clock in the morning, and as I was leaving him in his hotel lobby area, he said, "Wait a minute." And I turned around and I looked at him, and he looked at me, locked on with those eyes. And it was uncomfortable. It was like, it seemed like a long time, but I know it was just a few seconds. And he
Hmm.
said, "I want to remember the people who have helped me." And I had no response. I didn't know what to say. I just broke my gaze with him, and I went and I sat in my police car, and I started to cry. And I was not a
Mm.
crier. I never cried. And, but
Hmm.
at that stage of life, I was this tough protector.
Yeah.
And it struck me and it broke me down. And I remember thinking to myself, who have I become? Because that's
Right.
the guy that I felt like I was becoming was not the guy that my mom and dad raised, and not the guy that
Hmm.
wanted to be a police officer. But I was getting so crusty.
Hmm.
But Norman, just by being himself, started to chip away at that crust of mine. And so I use his story a lot when I'm talking to people, that what seemed to be a happenstance contact, that
Yeah.
we met each other, never saw him again. I go in detail in the book where I found him later, but he had died, and I found his grave
Oh.
site, and that's a powerful story in itself. Um,
Hmm.
but so here's this guy that I had probably half an hour, 30 minutes, of contact with. And I think about him almost every day. And this is, I don't even know how
Hmm.
many years ago, it was years ago. But the power that we have on affecting other people's lives just by showing up, and our
Yep.
attitude, our energy,
Hmm.
and not being that person that sucks all the excitement out of in a conversation, or,
Yeah.
just that,
Yeah.
because we all know those negative people too. But uh,
Sure.
And so I refer to, that person was a Norman, or if she's female, like a Norma, that
Yeah.
person really
Yeah.
affected me. And we can be Normans and Normas for other people.
Wow. Tim. So as you say this, delightful photo of you clapping hands, mirroring your one-ish
Yeah.
grandson,
Yeah.
sitting by your new book, which is very exciting. Who would have thought 30 years ago that you'd have written a book talking to some dude around the other side of the planet about Norman,
Right.
right? Like it's amazing.
It is. It's too much to wrap our heads around.
Yeah. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.